Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Futurum Tech Webcast interview series. This is part of our newly launched Women in Tech series, and I'm thrilled to have as my guest today Jasmina Omic. And she's with Riscure, a global security lab offering security services and tools. We're talking about all things cybersecurity today and the importance of being PSA certified. PSA Certified offers a framework for security-connected devices from analysis to security assessment and certification. And this framework provides standardized resources to help resolve the growing fragmentation of IoT requirements and really ensure that security is no longer a barrier to product development. That sounds like a mouthful, but the real gist of this is that with the proliferation of IoT devices, integrating security into the nascent stages of product development is more critical now than ever before. So that's really what we're talking about today. And Jasmina helped in the creation of PSA Certified, which is why I'm so interested to talk with you today. So before we get started on our conversation about all things security, Jasmina, why don't you tell us a little bit about your career and your career path? You and I have spoken a little bit about this before, and I think it's fascinating, sort of the journey that you've had. So welcome, and I can't wait to hear more from you.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here and have the opportunity to share information about PSA Certified. And I'm very happy that you're also asking me about my career for stimulation of other women in technology. I started studying electrical engineering, and after electrical engineering, I got interested in math. So I did my PhD in mathematics. And finally, I got a little bit overwhelmed with the mathematics and with doing things in abstract manner. And I decided to go in security domain and have a hands-on work, which is security evaluation of embedded devices and embedded chipsets. After finishing all this, I got a large knowledge from the different type of markets and different type of solutions in payment industry, in media and entertainment industry, in automotive and IoT. And from that perspective, with this type of knowledge, I understood that it's very useful for the company to become a product manager for services and have an oversight over all the services that we are actually doing in this company.
And I think that I remember you saying, I think I remember a line in our conversation a week or so ago about sort of hacking your way into things, because you love, that's kind of been the secret to my success, my career success, is that I love change and I love solving problems, and I love walking into a situation and being the person and being part of a team, not really necessarily just an individual, but being part of a team that says, how do we get to the yes? How do we make this happen? And I think that's really, for me, an exciting part of my career, that and also just being able to love change and learning new things. And I'm very grateful. I think that we are kind of wired how we're wired, and for those of us who are wired to truly love change, we're so fortunate, because I think we live in a world today where change is a requirement and it's a given, and for those people for whom change is hard, it's kind of tricky. So they need to get on the change train. So let's talk a little bit about digital transformation and the impact of digital transformation in the IoT industry. So just I'll quickly note that the IoT industry is predicted to reach a global market size of 150 billion by 2025. This is not this is no small industry, and we know that industries as a whole are moving to adopt digital solutions which make their businesses more efficient, and everything today is powered by data and lots of data. And so, the traditional internet connected people to machines. The IoT connects machines to machines and then takes all this data that machines collect and shares it, but every part of that journey of that data involves security. So you've got an insider seat here, Jasmina. Let's talk a little bit more about the IoT and how it's probably more pervasive than most people realize, and also maybe we can touch on how the IoT is powering, and it really will power everything we do. So what do you think? Talk with me a little bit about the IoT.
IoT is in a large expansion right now. There are smart homes. There are automotive is really extremely spreading out the services and offerings that they can provide. For example, it is going to be possible to pay your different, the oil that you're purchasing for your car, the electricity that you're purchasing for your car. You can pay that with your car. There's payment enabled in cars. It is possible to warm up your smart home while you are coming back because your thermostat is connected to the internet and it is available on your phone. Your lighting is available on your phone. A lot of critical infrastructures are getting very advanced and very fast. The different type of sensors are embedded and expanded and present. And this amount of data gathered about people by devices that are developed very quickly and under strong pressure of the price is really influencing security. Security can be created only if you have a secure development process within your company, when you are deriving software and when you are basing your decisions about the platform. And only if you have secure development cycle, then you can produce secure devices. And IoT is connected to the networks and can influence the security over the complete network because it is simple and it is very sensitive to security. It is practically an open door for your network, your infrastructure. Many different kinds of security issues can be born there. That's why security in IoT devices will become extremely important very quickly.
Oh, yes, I absolutely agree. And to kind of step back from this a little bit and give the most simple of examples, you spoke about smart cars and smart thermostats, but, there are toys. My kids are teenagers, so they're kind of past the little kid toys these days. But I've written in the past a lot when my kids were younger about, IoT connected dolls and other devices that children play with, many of which were developed without any thinking at all about security. And, those and concerns at that time, when I was writing about it, was really about children's privacy and, things that parents were integrating into their homes that they didn't really realize were not secure. And I think that, and a lot of us have smart thermostats, and I drive a car that is IoT connected, and it's like kind of once you get used to those things that surround you, you don't even think about it. You walk into a smart office building back in the day when we used to go to office buildings, but all of these things that happen that are conveniences and that we take for granted. But then when you extrapolate it out to utilities, when you smart cities and automobile and things like that, there's also extreme dangers involved. It's bad enough that Barbie, and actually I shouldn't use that brand name. It's bad enough that any doll is developed and it's IoT enabled and it is not secure. But it's critically important when you start looking at critical infrastructure, or when you look at business data, when you look at consumer data, when you look at customer data and all of those things. And so that's really when security becomes, I believe that every conversation has to start with security as the foundation, and hopefully this conversation will get people thinking about that a little bit more as well. So, as you have seen businesses rush to digital transformation, and what changes do you see as you talk with colleagues or you work with clients? What changes do you see that you think companies might need to think about and adapt?
First of all, companies need to start with embedding the secure development process in their development process. Next to that, it is absolutely important for all the OEMs that are developing on certain platform to consider the security of the platform and to have a way to communicate with the market what is the security requirements that you are covering and how are they applied when I'm developing my application and my OS on top of it. Basically, the governments are also taking the first steps in legal regulation of consumer devices, IoT. In Europe, ENISA is doing a standardization, and US, we have NIST doing the standardization. And we also have several states in US that are taking the first steps towards legislation, such as Californian Bill SB 327, and there are similar activities in Oregon and Virginia in US. In Europe, the legislation will start with European Commission, and ENISA is the main advisor and main driver there. And there is a Cybersecurity Act, which is driving the digital transformation that is happening in Europe. which will include IoT for consumer devices. But NIST is also thinking about IoT in the transportation market as well as health market. This is going to happen in the next 2-3 years. And it is very important for OEMs to get ready and be really in a position where they can produce products that are secure and they can market them openly and they can communicate with the market about the security level that they have.
Right, I agree. You know, and it's kind of one of those things that you don't develop a product. That's not the first step. You step back and you think about, you know, not only what the impact of this product is and what the potential of this product is, but what are all the regulations in all the countries where I hope to be able to sell this product that I need to take into consideration. Because if you do that later, you're going to have a lot of headaches. And I think that that's one of the things, you know, that I see that brands really need to adapt to. And, you know, we've done actually a couple of different research studies here at Futurum in the last couple of months, and one of them surveyed 2,000 consumers and 2,000 brands on customer experience, and you know, sort of how and talked with customers about how they felt about privacy and data privacy, and you know, customers do very much feel vulnerable. And I think that, you know, you made a point about messaging and really speaking in your messaging to consumers, whether it's, you know, direct to consumer or whether it's a B2B consumer, and really letting customers know that you start with security and that their security means everything to you. I think that's really important. And that's, you know, the part of, I think, the messaging that PSA Certified shares as well. So, but I think we'll see lots of changes in that. I think that and when you can sort of plan in advance for all of the hurdles that you have, you're going to be on a much better path down the road. So, you know, we're talking about security, and, you know, the other report that I mentioned was about security and about breaches. And, you know, these days when it comes to cybersecurity, it's really not a matter of whether your company will in some way experience a data breach. It's more when that will happen or how often that will happen. And part of our research was around, you know, sort of IT functionality, and whether people, our survey audience, were asked questions about, you know, whether you use a dashboard so that you can have, you know, a bird's eye view of security operations throughout your organization. And, you know, the people who responded to our survey that they did actually had, of course, a higher incidence of reported breaches that were discovered and remediated than people who weren't looking at security. And you know what I mean? So anyway, security is fundamental. And, you know, hackers are getting more and more and more sophisticated. So, you know, talk a little bit about, you know, what the role cybersecurity plays here in the IoT industry, and, you know, what we're seeing happen with regard to governments and, you know, how they're waking up. You have any thoughts on that?
Security in IoT industry will affect OEMs, it will affect the consumers. Business to business case, the problem with security is that it's always a future risk. And you need to estimate this risk to understand better what will happen to your market, what will happen to your product. It happened before that cameras that are stored in houses have been broken from the internet side and have been taken over by hackers. This led to significant drop in sales for some camera producers until they went for a proper certification in this context in common criteria. Then they were able to sell the cameras again. There are aspects of security which will influence OEM sales capabilities or could lead to the problems with liability if the legislation is open, as it is going to be in the next few years. That's right. Where Europe is going. That's where US is going. Japan is also establishing legislations which will lead to liability for OEMs. And definitely something is present in Singapore as well. They are the leading country in this aspect.
Yeah, that doesn't actually really surprise me, and so really security can't be optional. That's kind of the drum that we're beating in this conversation. Security can't be optional, and that's really where I see the PSA certification offering having so much value. Can you talk a little bit about, sort of the different, level 1 certificate and the level 2 certificates? Can you talk a little bit about sort of the differences there and why they bring so much value as part of this equation?
Let's first start with the fact that the PSA certificate program is developed by 7 expert companies that are working in embedded system security for a very long time. PSA Certified is also trying to make umbrella over different events that are currently happening in the market, in the legislation aspect, in standardization aspect, but also in the industry-driven schemes such as IoT in US, and there is also CESIP in Europe. ARM PSA is trying to build an umbrella that will incorporate all these different specifications and build that on top of the base. And base is practically a platform on which applications will be built afterwards. There are multiple levels in this scheme, starting with level 1, which is driven by the questionnaire and can be used by the platform developer, chipset developer, by the OS developer, and by the application developer, which practically creates a device in the end. The questionnaire is actually describing the architecture and verifying that there are security aspects built into the architecture. And these architectural aspects are considered by the security evaluation labs. Security evaluation labs does not go into the implementation for level 1. So at least the security architectural level is sound and secure. The next level, L2 level, is focused on the platform or practically a chipset. And in this sense, the security level is going into the implementation and provides more assurance that security is really implemented and is really working on this device. Next is also planned and is going to be developed soon is level 3. The difference between level 2 and level 3 is in the intensity the attacker can put into the evaluation of the device. The hacker can hack level 2 devices with less effort, while the level 3 devices will require much more effort, activities such as side channel, fault injection, hardware access, and we will go really deep inside the security. That would be the approach PSA Certified is taking, and it's building certain levels, so for everybody to develop their platforms and then further on the solutions on top of them, which are actually bringing security in the market of IoT.
So I'm thinking a little bit about, there is economic benefit, is there not, in terms of messaging, in terms of your commitment to your customers, in terms of, we care so much about security that being PSA certified is not even, it's a no-brainer. Is that really part of, what this value proposition is about when we get, and there are many, many, many advantages, many very technical advantages, and I get that. And those are all things that we should care about. But I think that, when you look at the bottom line, when you look at dollars and cents, when you look at all of that sort of thing, to me, this is really a no-brainer. This is, this interjects so much in terms of potential cost savings in down the line. How do you feel about that?
For OEMs, building on top of a secure platform is much easier. It's much easier to bring security in such a device. It saves in the development process quite a lot. And also any kind of liability or modifications later on, they are also offloaded. And PSA Certified, the main purpose of this certificate and other certificate as well is to communicate in the market. This is a secure product. This is a secure platform. If you build on top of it and if you use it properly, you will develop a secure device. This is of course, reducing the amount of money that is needed to be placed in security. And it's also simplifying communication between OEMs and vendors for the chipset and platforms.
Yeah, I think of it as kind of being part of a community, and trusting and relying on, and this really I believe that the PSA certified works to align the industry, and we're all working from the same playbook. We're all following the same game plan. I think I've been watching too many episodes of Friday Night Lights right now, but it does truly set a new level of security, and I think that when we treat security as part of the development process or as part of anything that we do as a secret, that I think that becomes a challenge. And I think that when we can talk about security, and we can talk about the importance of security, and we can talk about how to have more secure systems and how we can work within a framework of being PSA certified, I think that, it really kind of makes everyone talk the same language. And I think that that's really important for our industry today, for enterprises and for consumers,
Speaking the same language is only one aspect. Basing your security on sound security concepts such as root of trust,
right,
proper cryptography, proper communication is really critical for you to actually build on top of that everything that is required by the governments and will be required in next few years. And next to communication, it's also the independence of the security evaluation. PSA certified products are evaluated by an independent security lab, which means it's not that your vendor is trying to market their product to you. It's that vendor of yours that you're buying from has really proven and shown that third-party independent hacker or evaluator or an analyzer actually estimated that this security is of a certain level and that it is really the correct claim that you are showing off to your vendors, to your consumers.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important, and I think it will get more important, as time goes on and as the IoT continues to grow at its rapid pace. Well, Jasmina, is there anything, I kind of feel like maybe this wraps up our conversation. Is there anything that I haven't touched on that you want to leave us with?
I would like to also share the fact that there are many IoT products that will come up. A lot of them will be quite different and will be used for different purposes. But they do have platforms that are coming only from several silicon vendors. There are about 25 silicon vendors that have went through the PSA certified evaluations with their products, and there are over 40 products available that have passed level 1 and level 2 certification. And this is a good base and very large market acceptance that PSA Certified has actually achieved. I would like to share that. I think that's a big success for the scheme.
I think that's a great success. I think that's a great success indeed. I'm glad you shared that. Well, thank you so much for being a part of this interview series and for hanging out with me today. It has truly been a pleasure getting to know you and having this conversation about cybersecurity. And I hope you'll come back and hang out with me again sometime.
That would be very nice. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.